The morning. Good morning. How did you catch Down syndrome? A genuine question asked by a benefits assessor who was working out how much disability benefit a claimant was entitled to. As a result of examples like that, there is a pervasive lack of trust amongst people with disabilities in the way their claims for welfare are assessed. That's what a group of MPs has found. Since 2013, 290,000 claims for personal independence payments or employment and support allowance, which were initially rejected, have gone on to be approved at appeal. That's a total of 6% of all those assessed. In a moment, we'll talk to a whistleblower who used to be a benefits assessor but quit after several weeks. First, have a look at this.
MPs have been looking at how PIP and ESA assessments and payments are being carried out. PIP stands for Personal Independence Payment. It's for people with disabilities or long-term health problems. It's aged at people between 16 and 64. PIP is a non-means tested benefit, which means it doesn't matter how rich or poor you are, you're still eligible to claim it. It's to help with the living costs that accompany any condition. ESA is slightly different. It stands for Earning and Support Allowance. It's a benefit you are paid if your ability to work is limited by ill health or a disability. To be able to claim for ESA, you have to go through a medical assessment. If you qualify for ESA, you'll be put into two groups, either a support group or a work-related activity group. The support group is for people judged unable to work. The work-related activity group is to help those who the government believes could work if they're given help. Last year, MPs put out a call for evidence to see if the payments and the companies who manage them had been doing a good job. Their report has found that for the majority of people, the system runs smoothly. But for a small minority, when things go wrong, they go very wrong. Many say the outcome of their assessments bore little relation to their circumstances, and that assessors were ignorant. One woman was allegedly denied benefits because her report said she walks her dog, but she says she can't walk and doesn't have a dog. Another person with Down syndrome says they were asked when they caught it. After 4,000 submissions, MPs have now made recommendations for changes. They say the claim process should be made easier. For example, deaf people should be allowed to fill in their assessment by email. They also say that decisions should be made more clear and open, and that claimants should be able to see what's written about them so they can understand how decisions are made. The government says the changes need to be made to ensure every person feels they are treated fairly, with respect and dignity.
Let's talk to a whistleblower then. Grace, not her real name, who worked as a benefits assessor but quit after a few weeks because of the pressure. She's also a member of the Labour Party. Frank Field is here. He too is a member of the Labour Party. He's the Labour chair of the Work and Pension Select Committee. That's the group of MPs who've released today's report. At her home in Yorkshire is Kath Scarlett, who was so distrusting of the process, she secretly filmed it when she was being assessed. Her Twitter bio says she, quote, fights for disabled people's rights in every waking minute. She's a trade unionist, a disability officer for the NUT and Labour. And in Salford, Martin Corr. He's a probation officer. He's registered blind and he applied for PIP in order to get technology on his phone. Welcome all of you. Thank you very much for talking to us. Grace, you worked for one of the companies that assesses claimants. You trained for 2 weeks but lasted only several weeks in the job. Why?
I was disgusted with the system that I was working within. To me, it was institutional abuse, and so I resigned and escalated my concerns to my nursing council.
What do you mean it was institutional abuse?
The system was, it wasn't adequate. It didn't give claimants long enough to explain and express the type of discomfort, the type of pain that they were going through. The nurses were under a lot of stress, and I think it led to a lot of mistakes. I know copy and pasting goes on.
What do you mean?
Nurses copying from Word documents onto assessment reports.
So not genuinely filling an assessment report in, having had an interview with the claimant?
No.
Why? To save time?
To save time. Right. Nurses are expected to assess 4 or 5 clients a day. Over that, they get a bonus, £50 bonus.
So 6 or more, if you see 6 or more clients today, you get an extra 50 quid.
Yeah, there's a lot of sickness and I think retention's very difficult in this profession. They entice you with high wages, but management put you under so much stress that I think a lot of people leave, a lot of nurses leave.
Is there a particular claimant that sticks in your mind that you saw?
I had a lady come to my service, dropped off by a landlord, incapable of making her own way there. In my mind, in my experience of over 20 years working with people with learning disabilities, this lady had learning disabilities. In fact, she said she went to special school. She gave me the name of the school that she went to. She could not read the letters that she brought with her, the evidence. She had over 50 pieces of evidence on the computer, which I was expected to read within half an hour. And clearly she had cognitive difficulties. When I made my report on my observations with my experience, it was sent back and the auditor made me change it and said there was no evidence that she had learning disabilities at all.
Wow. So an auditor who'd never met this person completely overruled you, even though you have 20-odd years in this field, experience in this field, and you'd spent time with this woman.
Yeah, it's disgraceful.
Right. Frank Field, what do you think of that?
Well, when I was talking to Grace earlier, what struck me was not only the humility of that she's brought to this task, but she said, which was stunning and terrifying, she'd been 20 years a nurse, and she still felt that with all that experience, she was being asked to do a job with all that professional expertise she was not really suited to do. Then you hear from Grace that when she does make a judgment to the very best of her ability, the auditor comes along and tells her to actually change it. And it's this period of growing uncertainty and lack of trust that the committee looked at. And we believe the only way of tackling that in the short run is for all these interviews to be recorded.
Okay.
Now, every organisation concerned with this says we should actually, don't they, Grace, but we should have these interviews, key interviews, recorded. The government, when it came to give evidence, said, oh, well, we must consult on this, and we pointed out to the government, everybody's agreed but you, so if you're doing a consultation, it's you're talking to yourself. Now, why don't you make this one bold move and say that people who are disabled don't have to struggle around with recording machinery to able to present that things were not as was reported, but that it would just be an automatic right for applicants to ask for their interview to be recorded.
Okay, what do you think of that idea, Grace, as someone who was an assessor?
Absolutely, and for the assessor to use that recording as well to write the report. Sometimes reports are left open till the following day. It's totally against policy, but you can't get that all the reports written at times.
Is it possible you couldn't cope with the pressure? Because, you know, when you start a new job, it's hard. You're trying to get your head around things. It does feel a bit chaotic. Could that not be part of the reason why you felt stressed?
No, I think it was bad management. Some of my colleagues were coming in at 7:30 to finish reports and leaving at 8 o'clock, and then management were asking them to take laptops home on the days off to complete reports.
Okay, let me read some messages here. An email from JB. I'm about to claim benefits for the first time in about 25 years due to sickness, and I'm terrified about it. I know that if I give them any excuse whatsoever to turn my claim down, they will, which makes my illness far worse. Frank says PIP assessments are appalling. I've been to a tribunal and I now have a longer wait due to a muck-up by the Department of Work and Pensions. They sent a physio to assess my mental health. Lorenzo says assessors' reports come back with numerous errors which resulted in my level being dropped, and to top it all, she said I refused an exam. The joke is I wasn't offered one to refuse. Frank Field, can I just put what, I mean, you know what the government say because you've quoted it in your report, which is 83% of ESA claimants and 76% of PIP claimants say that they are happy with their overall experience.
Yes, the report makes clear that most people don't object, and we hope that figure does reflect how people feel. But for example, in Birkenhead on Friday, a constituent had been turned down. One of the questions was, could you go to your local shop? But being very honest, she said yes. What she didn't, nor was the question posed in a way to encourage her to say, when I've been to the local shop, I'm then 2 days lying around on the bed trying to recover from that. The question was there answered honestly, but it didn't actually get anything like how disabled that person was.
Let me bring in Kath and Martin then. Kath Scarlett, hello. You were a teacher until 3 years ago when you became disabled. Now, you filmed your assessment and it was mostly fine, I think, but there was one thing that was odd. Tell our audience what that was.
When I got the decision, it had downgraded my care component of it, saying that I could cook meals and I could get myself washed and dressed perfectly okay because I'd used a crutch in my right hand. It took me a long time to be able to get a copy of the report. I had to get my MP involved to be able to get a copy, and when I got it, it was actually full of inaccuracies right from beginning to end.
Right. And how did you react when you read it then?
I was completely taken aback because, I mean, within the first 2 minutes of the assessment, there were two, well, they can only be called lies, because it had said that although I walked with crutches and I was walking very slowly, that I'd walked with a normal posture, and that I had held onto the arms of my chair and lowered myself down slowly. And on the video, it actually shows me walking sort of sideways and very stooped on the crutches, so I was leaning on them very heavily. And I don't even touch the arms of the chair to sit down. I was trying to balance myself on the crutches and I actually fell into the chair.
Okay. So not an accurate description, you say, of what actually happened.
Absolutely not. And there were a huge amount of similar things within the report.
Let me bring Martin in. Hello, Martin. Hi. I can't hear you down here for some reason. I'm not sure why. Try again.
Hello.
Yes, perfect. Hello, thank you. Martin, you've been registered blind since 1979. You work as a probation officer.
I do.
Why were you applying for PIP at all?
Well, prior to PIP, I had been already in receipt of its predecessor, the Disability Living Allowance, and I was invited, so to speak, to apply for PIP. I use quite a lot of technology to allow me to function, primarily sort of electronics, to read text, magnify stuff, that sort of thing.
And how was the assessment process for you as someone who is blind and is never going to regain their sight?
Well, it sort of starts off that they send you a 15, 16-page form in no other format but paper. Now that, if you're visually impaired, you sort of accept as the norm in life. I then was assessed by a very nice lady. I didn't have to get out of my chair at all, but from that assessment, she was able to establish that I could cook meals and I could sort of wash, dress, and could travel around safely. This was in spite of a letter from my consultant, which basically said that this man has little or no vision and would be severely impacted, from a mobility officer who is a specialist in training visually impaired people to move around safely, that I needed a white stick to safely navigate even in unfamiliar routes. The report, when I got it back from the DWP as part of the dossier for tribunal, said that whilst they knew that Mr. Corr had a white stick and that he did use it to prevent it from bumping into things, they did not deem it to be an aid.
Eh?
They did not deem it to be an aid.
I'm sorry, this is like a parallel universe. It's absolutely
well, there was lots of lovely suggestions from my colleagues at work about what it actually was for.
I bet some you can't mention on daytime TV as well.
None of which could be broadcast, no.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Okay, so let me read some more of the statement from the DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions. They say, our aim has to be that every person feels they are treated fairly, with respect and with dignity, and we're committed to continuously improving the experience of our claimants. That's why we've commissioned 5 independent reviews of the work capability assessment, accepting over 100 recommendations, and 2 independent reviews of PIP assessments. We continue to work closely with our providers to ensure people receive high-quality assessments and are exploring options around recordings to promote greater transparency and trust.
Well, it's good to hear that, but they could actually announce today they're doing, as Grace was saying, the really importance of recording these key interviews, but they also need to accept there's a real long-term problem. If you've got somebody like Grace, who's got 20 years of being a nurse, a really highly skilled person, feels that this is such a difficult task, then you've got problems, haven't you? But also, when they began this assessment procedure, they appointed 3 private companies to do it. They believed that that would attract many more private companies wanting to undertake the work.
Okay.
Now, they've not done that. None of the companies fulfill their targets. And the government's got this key question: what do we do now when the market's letting us down? Do we try and make a transition of bringing this back into house, where these benefits used to reside and from which the administration took place?
Unlikely to happen.
Well, it depends on the new Secretary of State, but it fits a pattern now, doesn't it? Sadly, Victoria, that the high hopes of like with PFIs farming things out to the private sector don't always work.
Well, but as you've acknowledged, most people are happy with their experience of being assessed. This from Louisa: I'm a wheelchair user. My PIP assessment was very thorough. It lasted over an hour and it would have wheedled out any scammers.
Well, that's really good, but no one's done the survey on those who are alleged to be. I hope they are satisfied, because otherwise it's even more drastic, isn't it? Okay. But no one's done, certainly the government hasn't done a survey on those, and we just had this inquiry, had more people write in, thousands, we've never had that before, of people, as Grace has described, feeling they got a really rough deal.
Okay. Grace, the whistleblower, not her real name, member of the Labour Party, and Kath Scarlett, a disability rights campaigner, trade unionist and disability officer for the NUT and Labour. Thank you very much for your time. I have many messages from you. I will read some more, of course, through the rest of the programme. Do keep them coming in. Send me an email, victoria@bbc.co.uk, or you can message us on Twitter or WhatsApp. Also coming up in the next half hour, running your own business from home can be really tempting. But are some of the marketing schemes advertised too good to be true? We'll find out how some are leaving people thousands of pounds in debt. And a BBC investigation has found